what's happening? What's happening, Roland? Well, today is Friday. In fact, it's the first day of spring. It's the 21st of March. And guess where I am? We're actually in Fort Worth, Texas, and my son Scott is fishing the Bassmaster Classic right here on Lake Ray Roberts. From what I understand, I just flew in from Florida, and from what I understand, they're really, really catching them out there on Ray Roberts. But the wind is blowing 30 or 40 miles an hour. So these guys that are catching some fish, hey, they can't be doing finesse stuff too much. They got to be probably power fishing with big old spinner baits and big old chatter baits and I don't know, jigging stuff. I don't know, there have to be something heavy duty, and power fishing is probably what's going to do it with a real windy day. But anyway, here we are, and we're at the big sports show. Now here at the Bassmaster Classic, they put on a really big show. I'm in the Nitro booth right now with all the big, beautiful Nitro boats. Then there's a Ranger as part of the team, and of course the Bass Tracker, the Tracker Marine is right there, and Bass Pro Shop booth. This is a whole big complex. Is Bass Tracker, Bass, Cabela's, the whole thing. It's just a big venue. So that's where we are right now. I'll be signing autographs along with Jimmy Houston. And Steve Harvey was going to come down. He's with the Family Feud guy. He was going to ask Jimmy and I some interesting little questions and some more lucrative moments on the water. I had some neat little stories to tell. But I understand now that probably Steve Harvey's not going to be here. But nevertheless, we're going to have a good time. People are just starting to show up. They just opened the booths up. And now there's just a handful of people in here, maybe 1,000 or so. But there'll probably be somewhere in the neighborhood 25,000 people show up here at the Bassmaster Classic in Fort Worth. So it's really, really a big venue. And of course, Bass Pro Shop is one of the biggest, probably the biggest contributor to this whole big arena for the sports show. But there'll be a lot to hear. So come on down and we'll answer your questions on your boating needs, on your tackle needs, and everything else. Hey, but the good news is it's Friday, and it's the update of the week. And this week has been terrifically good fishing. And that's the main thing. And I guide on both Headwaters Lake in Florida and also on Lake Okeechobee in Florida, and also go down deep in the Everglades and fish the canal. So last Saturday, I took some parties down. The wind was blowing real hard on Okeechobee. I couldn't get out. So what I did, I went deep down the Everglades, the L28 canal, L65 and L67 canal. I took my bass boat and launched it. And there's there's all kind of non-native fish as well. There's Oscars, there's Mayan cichlids, there's big mudfish, there's big garfish, there's crappie, there's every kind of thing, and there's a million bass. So basically, I was fishing topwater for this last weekend, and what I do, I take a little Spro Pop 80 popper, I throw it out there on, say, a spinning rod with, say, 20-pound braid, and every single cast, something, whether it was a little bluegill, or an Oscar, or a gar, or a mudfish, or a bass, something would nibble at the lure. And the bass would take it pretty good. In fact, Sunday we caught 87 bass. I think we caught about 25 Mayan cichlids, which are fish about that big, they're about a pound. And we caught about 25 Oscars. Oscars are actually an aquarium fish, and they're big black things, and they weigh about a pound. And then we caught all kinds of fish. But can you imagine making 500 casts in a day and getting almost that many strikes? I mean, of course, we didn't have any real big bass. We had a 6-pound bass as big as we caught. But still, 3 and 4 pound bass aren't bad, and we caught a couple dozen of that size fish. So that was really, really a treat. Now, I also fished Okeechobee, and one day the wind blew really, really hard, and I went up to the area where the big tournament was won, the Elite Series was won just 2 weeks ago, and it was up the rocks on the Indian Prairie Canal and the rocks on the Harney Pond Canal. And that worked out pretty good. Early in the morning, we caught them on topwater. Again, that's Spro Pop 80. We caught them on regular worms. It's just a standard Cinco type of worm. Actually, Bass Pro Shop has a sticko. It's called a sticko worm, and I use it a lot. And they also use it on swimming worm. We take the big ultra vibe swimming worms and paddle tail worms, and we'd swim along the rocks. And bam, we caught bass up to about 7 pounds. What was the funny thing was, last week was, just as I pulled, I think it was last Saturday or Sunday, I pulled up to the rocks, and just as I pulled up, another boat pulled up next to me, well, not far away, and their first cast, cast the guy made, I yelled, he started yelling and screaming, it's, hey Roland, look at this. And he caught an 8.5 pound bass on the first cast that he made that day. And that was on Lake Okeechobee. That was kind of strange. I mean, he didn't catch many bass after that. He had kind of a slow day, but he did have that one monster. And speaking of monsters, we got a monster last week. Now, monsters to me are any bass over 8 pounds. Now, that's the Florida trophy catch, and that's something that Bass Pro Shop endorses as well. The Bass Pro Shop will send the lucky winners of that catch a bass over 8 pounds, they'll send them a nice gift certificate worth about $100. And also, you get from the state of Florida, from the Florida Trophy Catch group that you'll see on your website, FloridaTrophyCatch.com. They'll send you a beautiful plaque of say the 8 pound bass, more than 8 pound bass that you caught. And what they want is they want a picture of a digital scale holding the fish so that they can read how big it is. And then they also want a length and girth measurement to certify they can kind of run the numbers and figure if it's a true weight or not. And that qualifies you for getting this beautiful certificate from the Florida Trophy Catch. Well, anyway, last week I had some guys show up, and people always say, I always ask them what their biggest fish is. And this one guy was from California. He said, well, I've caught several over 10 pounds out in California, but my friend here has never caught a bass over 8 pounds. So I want him to catch a 10 pound bass. I said, wow, that's really tough to catch a 10 pound bass. That only happens once every month or so. We catch a 10 pound bass. So I said, okay, we'll catch a 10 pound bass. I just kind of blew it off like that, and I said, we'll catch a 10 pound bass. Well, the first place we stopped, we caught like 15 nice bass in a row, up to about 5 pounds. And we was really having a good day, and they'd say, boy, this is really, really good. I said, we'd caught like 35 bass already that morning, and it got to be almost noon. And I said, let's go to the big mats and the big floating areas where there's a lot of floating islands and stuff. And maybe some of the bigger bass, because of the bright sun, it was a real bright sunny day, maybe they're underneath the mat. And we'll get the shiners right up against the mat, and maybe we'll get a big fish. And sure enough, the very first place I came to, there was an old irrigation ditch that ran up to this floating island. We threw that thing up there, and the first little bass is about that big. I said, oh, that's not very big. Next little bass is a little bit bigger, about 3 or 4 pounds. That's not very big. But the third bass was 10 pounds, 12 ounces. That's what it was. 10 pounds, 12 ounces. Great, big, giant, monster bass. Trophy of a lifetime bass. And at the same time, because these fish travel in schools, at the same time, a 7 pound bass hit the other side. So we had a 10 3/4 on one line and about a 7 1/4 on the other line. The 2 bass are all jumping together before we catch them both together, and it was quite a day. Needless to say, these guys were super elated, and that was really good. Connor, how much time do we have?
We have 8:37.
8:37. I try to get these little updates about 10 minutes long, and I'm here with Connor Weist. Connor Weist. He's my photographer. He works for Bass Pro Shop. He does all these great things like do these little updates with me. But anyway, thanks, Connor, for holding the camera good. You're a good photographer. And a good fisherman and a good guy at Bass Pro Shop as well. But anyway, listen, if you would, I'm trying to bring you all these updates. I want to just tell you what the secret was right now of the shiner fishing. You know, there's real hard to get good, big golden shiners. And everybody thinks that the big bass want a big shiner. That's not particularly the truth. A big shiner's like that. I don't like a shiner that big. We're fishing them like that. In fact, the other day, that 10 pounder, that 10 3/4 pounder, hit a shiner not much bigger than my finger. It was just about that big a shiner, which is a small shiner. But yet, for some reason, we catch just as many big bass on a small shiner as we do, and probably more, because the reason why you lose so many fish on a big shiner, if you have a great big shiner, you got a fairly small hook, he's probably just going to grab the shiner. And then if you set the hook real hard, all you do is pull the shiner and pull the hook right out of the shiner. So the best hookup ratio is with the smaller shiner, because it's the bigger hook and there's more chance that he just gobbles the whole thing down. And that's kind of what we end up with. But anyway, thanks for the listening to my update. I tell you, Lake Okeechobee's coming back pretty good. Headwaters is on fire, and all those canals down in South Florida are just doing terrific. So if you want to come down, this is the time. This is the first day of spring, by the way. And what does that mean? It means that the best fishing of the year is right now. And so you're going to have a big spawner. You've already had a couple spawns here at Okeechobee and at Headwaters as well. But there's even another big spawn coming up in April. And believe it or not, the May spawn, not many fish spawn in May, but a few of the monster bass spawn in May. We catch them on frogs and we catch them on topwater. So that's a good deal. Hey, hit that likes button, because that's the grease that makes this whole thing work. That's Bass Pro Shop and all my other great sponsors. They go crazy with the likes. So hit that likes button, folks. We'll see you again soon, and thanks for watching.